Michael Jordan of the University of North Carolina.
The Detroit Pistons select Grant Hill from Duke University.
With the third pick in the 2003 NBA Draft, the Denver Nuggets select Carmelo Anthony from Syracuse University. With the third pick in the 2009 NBA Draft, the Oklahoma City Thunder select James Harden of Arizona State University.
Each year, hundreds of elite basketball players enter the NBA Draft. Out of those elite 100, 60 are selected. Realistically, 40 will play an NBA game, and if we're being nice, between 15 to 20 will last over a year or two in the NBA. Each draft pick individually has its own ties, whether that be an NBA All-Star, a Hall of Famer, a bust, it doesn't matter. There's a significant player tied to each draft pick. But in this video, I want to specifically talk about the number 3 overall draft pick because it is very infamous and it is very notorious for producing very elite talent. If you don't know me already, my name's Cairo. I'm a content creator that likes to focus on everything basketball and football related, whether that be college, overseas, professional, doesn't matter, you name it. I try my best to overlook it and give my thoughts and opinion. In this video, I wanted to go over why I believe the number 3 draft pick is very infamous and it has made a significant mark in today's NBA game. The number 3 overall draft pick has produced a plethora of Hall of Fame level players, all-star level players, and plenty of players that have left a mark in this league and that you will remember for the rest of your lifetime. Those selected at number 3 have combined for an elite resume like no other. With many Hall of Fame talents in introductory like Bob Cousy, of course, Michael Jordan, you have Kevin McHale, Dominique Wilkins, you have Anthony Hardaway, which is Penny Hardaway, Grant Hill, most likely Jerry Stackhouse, Paul Gasol, Carmelo Anthony, potentially James Harden, most likely James Harden, and you have guys at the end of their career that could be favored. Maybe Bradley Beal, maybe Joel Embiid, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic potentially. Many Hall of Fame players, and most of them are already really young and haven't finished their careers yet. Now, what makes this draft pick significant compared to the rest? Well, when I look at the rest, obviously you can make the case for different draft picks. Of course, the number 1, the number 2, number 5, any other draft pick. But I look at the longevity. I look at how many role players are produced, and I look at how many busts are produced. And the number 3 draft pick, the resume, the talent alone, even with role players and the busts that are within the number 3 draft pick, are absolutely on another level compared to other draft picks. Even when we look at the role players or the players who weren't as good, Nate Thurman, you have Enes Freedom, Derek Favors, guys like Ben Gordon, Darren Williams, even O.J. Mayer had a small stint. Al Horford has a chance to be in the Hall of Fame even himself. Christian Laettner, Chris Jackson, Chris Washburn, plenty of guys that are role players that have just exceeded expectations when it comes to other different draft picks. Some of these guys you would consider bust because they are drafted at number 3. But the reason I favor the number 3 overall draft pick is that longevity. You look at newer guys coming in today too. R.J. Barrett, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Joel Embiid, Bradley Beal. The newer guys that are in the league that have established themselves already. A lot of the guys that I have already mentioned have had long careers, but some of the newer guys have already made names for themselves very early on, which is not very heard of with different draft picks. Different draft picks, usually depending on what team, it takes a while for you to establish yourself and get in the rhythm, have a role specifically set for you on a team. But it seems as though the number 3 draft pick has a consistent basis of players that establish themselves early and are in the league a lot longer than different draft picks. It is definitely something fascinating and interesting to look at because of how consistent this is. Because even when as mentioned before, we look at the role players, a lot of the role players have had very long careers. They might not be the best players, but they have very long careers that are good. Another example is Chauncey Billups. He had a great career. Baron Davis, they were doing good. These guys have had long careers, longevity, and it's just unheard of, especially from, other draft picks. And of course, it is the number 3 overall draft pick. You expect these guys to be good, but not all of these guys pan out. The argument that I'm making is that compared to all the bust, all the Hall of Fame level greats, the accolades, the role players, everything combined, this draft pick has been no else. It's been in a league of his own. Of course, you can make the argument for the number 1 overall draft pick. They've produced plenty of great talents, but the one thing I look at that is that the number 1 overall draft pick has also produced lots of expectations, and once those expectations aren't met, they're completely subside. People tend to crucify you. They really tend to criticize you for every little thing you do, and the number 1 overall draft pick has also produced plenty of the worst bust in NBA history. Not a lot of number 1 overall draft picks become role players and are decent in the NBA because of those high expectations. My most notable name that I can see is DeAndre Ayton. He has basically become a role player. He has potential to still be great, but he hasn't had an amazing season, especially for a guy that's being in Portland. And, he's been injured, but he should have the keys over there. And he's doing okay. And it's actually ironic because the number 2 overall draft pick is said to have plenty of bust in the NBA. The most notable one that you can remember is James Wiseman. He has not been good. You would think him being on the Pistons giving him a chance. He has, more time, less of that stage, at Golden State. He has a little bit more time to work on himself. It's a small city compared to Golden State, right? But he has been horrible. His IQ has not been there, and it's been a lot since a lot of these number 2 overall draft picks have come into the NBA. Of course, some of those draft picks have worked out, but I've recently looked at it, and a lot of those draft picks have not worked out. Which is why, if I were to be honest, one of my older videos, I made a video about how the Charlotte Hornets should select Scoot Henderson over Brandon Miller, and the more that I look at it, the more I could be wrong. I still believe in Scoot Henderson, and I think eventually he could become a better player than Brandon Miller. But fit-wise, it's usually very rare to see a team who's rebuilding select a player for fit and not the best player available. Even though that player might not be needed, usually the best player available should always take your team to the higher level, right? It's the same thing. It's the same conversation with football. Do you take the quarterback that could elevate your team, or do you build the team around the quarterback? Usually, most teams would want to build that quarterback. They want to have that quarterback so they can, uplift that team, It's an interesting situation. It's very rare to see. Now, of course, at the end of the day, this is all just superstition, It's not just true that if you get drafted number 3, you're going to be an amazing player, you're going to be great. It's the same thing with the number 1 overall pick. It doesn't automatically guarantee you anything. But it's just a video I wanted to make because it's just very consistent. I've seen it when we look at different number 3 overall draft picks year after year. They turn to pan out well. Look at LaMelo, what he's doing right now. Just a few years ago, he's arguably one of the best young guards in the league, right? RJ Barrett's having a breakout year. You already know what Luka Doncic is doing. It's just, you don't see this level of consistency with usually any other draft pick, and the expectations isn't as high when you compare it to the number 1 overall draft pick. Now, I'll be heavily looking into the draft a lot more. It has been busy for me with college, but I want to focus more on the NFL and the NBA draft to see what I know. I'll most likely be making a mock draft soon, or in a few months, of the NBA and the NFL draft to see where that goes. At the end of the day, it's all just superstition. I just wanted to see. And I will say this, though. It is very consistent, and the longevity is there of the number 3 overall draft pick, and it is unheard of with many other draft picks. My name's Cairo. If you haven't yet already, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.